Let's start with a classic logic puzzle. Premise 1, all harmful substances are regulated. Premise 2, cigarettes are regulated. Given those two statements, does it logically follow that cigarettes are a harmful substance? Strictly speaking, the answer is no. This is an invalid argument. Even if cigarettes share a trait with harmful substances, being regulated, it doesn't mean they belong to that category based only on the rules provided. Yet most people intuitively say yes because the conclusion matches their real-world knowledge. This is belief bias. It describes our tendency to evaluate the strength of an argument based on how much we agree with the conclusion, rather than whether the steps used to get there actually make sense. When a piece of information matches a pre-existing idea, we tend to stop inspecting the structural integrity of the argument. We simply accept it as valid because the result feels familiar. This indicates that even when we think we're being objective, our prior assumptions are already influencing the outcome of our reasoning. In a world overflowing with conflicting information, we are often told there is a simple way to bypass these mental shortcuts. We should listen to the experts. This is where we rely on epistemic authority. It's the trust and credibility we assign to people with high-level credentials, assuming their specialized knowledge makes them more reliable sources of truth. Usually, this works well for everyday tasks. We allow the experts' credibility to act as a stopping mechanism for our own research, trusting their stance so we don't have to do the heavy lifting ourselves. But it raises a difficult question. If our reasoning is so easily swayed by what we already believe, can a speaker's impressive resume actually change the way we process their logic? In 2024, researcher Mateusz Grzegow designed an experiment to test this exact collision, using a topic that is both complex and deeply personal: racism. Over 400 participants were asked to evaluate the validity of arguments made by two people in a discussion. These arguments were presented as formal logic puzzles, similar to the one we looked at earlier. The researchers changed one variable. For some participants, the speaker was described as a layperson. For others, they were introduced as a highly credentialed ethnologist and an expert in the field of racism. This plot shows the results across 5 groups. Authority had no significant effect on belief bias. Expert or layperson, the responses were identical. All scores fell in the negative range, proving everyone ignored credentials and relied solely on personal beliefs. The researchers even looked at people with a high personal need for structure, those who usually prefer clear rules and expert guidance. Even they didn't defer to the expert's logic when it conflicted with their beliefs. The study suggests that during formal reasoning, the expert's influence is surprisingly limited. Our internal bias appears to be a much stronger force than external authority. To understand why our brains are so resistant to an expert's logic, we have to look at how we protect our sense of identity. This is known as identity-protective motivated reasoning. In 2013, Dan Kahan at Yale studied how people process evidence on highly polarized social issues. He found a counterintuitive pattern. People who are better at reflective, conscious reasoning don't necessarily use those skills to find the most objective answer. Instead, people with higher cognitive reflection often use their mental energy to build more convincing justifications for the positions held by their ideological group. As reflective ability goes up, polarization actually increases. We aren't using logic as a tool for discovery, we are using it as a tool for defense, scanning an expert's argument for anything that helps us protect our existing views. This changes how we should think about expertise. A person's credentials might help us decide where to look for information, but those titles don't help us process that information any more objectively. While it's useful to trust a doctor's expertise for a medical prescription, relying on authority alone to settle a complex social or logical argument is risky. There is a real danger here. Public figures can use perceived authority to push flawed arguments, knowing that many listeners will accept them as long as the conclusion feels right. The researchers characterize this bias as remarkably robust. It suggests our internal reasoning is insulated from outside influence, even from a world-class expert. True critical thinking starts with the realization that an expert's badge doesn't make their logic flawless, and your own brain is already working to make sure you only hear what you already believe.